it's Crystal here with Doing It DIY Style, and today we are in my kitchen. Welcome. We are gonna bake, and the reason why we're gonna bake is because DIY to me means exactly what it stands for, doing it yourself. So anything that you do yourself is a DIY. So today we are going to follow a recipe that I found online for an apple pie with cinnamon crumble. So that is why I have these lovely apples right here. And what I'm going to do first is just peel it. The recipe calls for 3 1/4 pounds of apples, Granny Smith apples. I only got 3 pounds. I found a bag, a 3-pound bag in the grocery store, so I only got 3 pounds. But what I'm going to do is peel them, core them, and for me, in order to process them, because they do have to be cut in quarter-inch slices, I'm going to halve them so that I can fit them into my processor to be sliced. So I'm going to do that, and when we come back, we'll be ready to put the pie together. Okay guys, so I've cut the apples. As you can see, they are way thinner than a 1/4 inch thick. So I'm just going to have to make do with what I have, and hopefully the outcome is similar or the same. So as you can see, these are not plain apples. I did go ahead and put the filling ingredients on them, and I am mixing them now. And that is a 2/3 cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon, and 2 tablespoons of unsalted melted butter. And I'm just mixing it in to make sure that all of the apple is coated in the mixture. Because you want to make sure that once the the moisture in the apple starts coming out, that it's all coated evenly. So I'm just going to mix this in. Also, I have set out my box of frozen pie crust, and this is just frozen pie crust from the grocery store. The instructions do say to let it sit for 15 to 20 minutes. The pie crust has been sitting in the refrigerator since I purchased it yesterday. So the room temperature, waiting for it to get room temperature, shouldn't be that long. And then I'm just going to put the pie crust in the pie pan, and then we're going to work on the toppings for the apple pie. We're going to work on the cinnamon crumble. Okay, and I think this is well mixed. So I'm just going to let that sit here and just kind of absorb in itself. I'm just going to rinse my hands. out. And they come individually wrapped in this bag. This is actually store brand pie crust. And I'm just going to now this recipe that I am following actually has a recipe for pie crust. I chose not to make that recipe. I chose just to buy the frozen pie crust. Whatever you want to do is fine. I just found this would be a little easier for me. So this is the pie crust. Just unrolling it. And this is a 9-inch pie crust. You can see it started to rip a little bit. It is still cold a little bit. So I'm just going to sit this here and let it warm up a little bit more because I don't want to rip it any more than I already did. And when we come back, we'll fill this in to the form of the pie pan. And then we'll start working on the cinnamon crumble. I went ahead and formed the pie crust to the pie pan. I took a fork and did little, I guess, design on the edge. The pie crust rolls out to be kind of like an oval instead of a circle. So you may have to manipulate it a little bit to get it even on all sides. As you can see, I did not. Right here is all uneven. That's okay, it's only my second time working with a pie crust. So I also went ahead and put the ingredients for the cinnamon crumble in the food processor. And what is in here is 1 cup of all-purpose flour, a 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of golden brown sugar packed. That means you have to pack it in the measuring cup. The 1½ teaspoons of ground cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. So that we're going to blend together, and then we're going to pulse it and add 6 tablespoons of chilled unsalted butter that are cut into 1/2-inch cubes. I'm just going to put my hand over the top since we are going to be using that for the butter, and I don't need the cover, so I'm just going to blend it together. That looks like it's blended well together. So now we're going to add the cubes. I'm going to add them 4 at a time, which is 1 tablespoon at a time. And basically, it seems like it's like a crust recipe where you just pulse in the butter. Now it says to cut in until the mixture resembles wet sand. We haven't quite gotten there yet. do you guys think? Wet sand? I think so. So now what we're going to do is put the pie together. So we're going to, it says to mix the apple mixture to redistribute juice. So we're going to mix this. And the picture on this recipe shows the apples laying all nicely horizontally, like someone placed them in the pan, in the crust like that. I have a feeling that this pie is not going to look like that. Let's hope it tastes good. I believe Epicurious is a form of Bon Appetit. I'm not quite sure if it's another part of that, but or if the recipe was just taken from Bon Appetit, but there is some connection there with this recipe and Bon Appetit, so I have my fingers and toes crossed that this is really good. It says, then transfer to crust, mounding in center. So let's put it all in the center. Again, this recipe calls for 3 1/4 pounds of apples. I only got 3 pounds of apples, so it may not be as high of a mound as it would be if I would have gotten enough apples. Okay, now the instructions say to pack topping over and around apples. It even feels like wet sand. Sand castles, anyone? This is a lot of topping. Okay, going to brush melted butter around the edges of the pie crust because I like my crust to be golden brown. The instructions say to bake the pie on a baking sheet until the topping is golden, about 40 minutes. If it browns too quickly, cover it with aluminum foil. Reduce oven temperature to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and bake until apples in the center are tender when pierced and filling is bubbling thickly at the edges. for about 45 minutes longer. So you're going to be cooking this for over an hour basically. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and hurry up and get it in the oven so we can start baking. Okay? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the apple cinnamon crumble pie, fresh out of the oven. I did not realize that in the recipe it doesn't tell you a degree, an oven degree to start the pie at. So I just kind of had to guess. Another pie that I made started out at 425. So I started this one at 425. And I think that was a little too high. I think I should have started it at maybe 400. And then brought it down to 350. So, but you live and you learn. And that's what this site is all about, learning. So this is the outcome of the apple cinnamon crumble pie. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for it to cool down overnight, because as you can see it has overflowed. So I'll let it cool down overnight and we'll see what it tastes like later. Hi everyone, so it's been 24, well not exactly 24 hours, it's been overnight, more like let's say 13 hours since we took the pie out of the oven, and this is what it looks like. It is a little sticky. It's because it was bubbling, it got it ran over the side, so it is sticking to this cloth that I put underneath it. Thank goodness I put the cloth underneath it. But it has cooled, and this is what it looks like. I believe if I did have the extra quarter pound of apples, it would be a little more full. But it doesn't look bad. Now is the fun part, and that is tasting it. So the crumble has definitely become a crust, kind of. You get a nice crunch when you put the knife in. And if you have any recipes that you are curious about and you would like for me to try them, send them to me and I'll be happy to try them. It doesn't all have to be desserts. It could be any kind of recipe. It doesn't have to be unhealthy foods. It could be healthy foods if you like. Yeah, send them to me and I'd be happy to try them out for you. Okay, so the crust is a little soggy, which with this kind of apples is kind of expected. This kind of apple pie. Okay. For the most part, it has held its form. Inside looks beautiful after the cut. Let me see if I can show that to you. A nice cut on the sides, no running over. So the cooling down definitely helped. It's held a nice shape. Not perfect, but it's held a nice shape. Crust in the back is falling off a little bit. Let's see. Let's put this baby to the test. The crumble is so good. And the apples are nice and tender. Even though it's not the original amount, as I've said several times, it is still a good amount. And you can see the crust on the bottom. It's soft. The actual bottom where it was on the pan has a little bit of a harder shell, but the inside is soft. And very good. It was a long process to make, with having to peel and core and slice the apples, but I would definitely make this again. You can really taste the cinnamon. I was actually just gonna say it kind of tastes like apple pie. Well, there you go. It tastes like apple pie. Perfect. It's so good. And I kind of like the apples cut a little bit thinner than 1/4 of an inch because they kind of melt in your mouth. You don't have that chewy, that chewiness, denseness of the thicker apples. It's very good. And I'm actually going to go ahead and finish this. So I will say goodbye. Thank you for taking your time out with me and learning how to make the Cinnamon Crumble Apple Pie from epicurious.com. It turned out to be a good recipe. We had a little glitch along the way, but no big deal. All in all, this pie came out phenomenal, and I plan on making it again. So thank you, and thanks for learning with me.